welcome everybody for this Why the Future of Learning is Immersive webinar. So thanks for joining this exciting meetup. We dive deep into the how, why, and what of immersive learning. And a special welcome to our speakers. Adnan, you already saw you here. We have Jonathon Richter there. We have, hi John. We have John Cardea. I think he's behind his mic, not behind his camera. We have Kaushal, and we have more speakers lined up. So thanks everyone. Special thanks to the speakers for joining, but even a more special thank for our audience. It's good to see many of you signing up from different parts of the world, different regions and different industries. And what's interesting for us is that while we typically have a lot of our customers, we also have a lot of new faces presenting and participating. So thanks a lot. I will do a proper introduction of all the speakers a little bit later. So John, you're next up. But let me take everyone through the agenda and introduce what we're going to do today. It will be a deep dive and touching various aspects of immersive learning. So first, the need of the training, equipping the workforce for the enterprise. We look at a scientific approach and what are the basics and what are the underlying trends. We'll look at how it looks like on the shop floor, in the companies, in various functions. We have a short break and we'll do some polling. And we have a very interesting session from one of our customers, BAE, taking you through one of their scenarios and how it's actually helping them, accelerating their engineering and production processes. Also look at the how. So we've asked Adnan to share some of their experiences and compile it in a 15-minute session on where do you start, how do you build a business case, and what use cases would you select, and what kind of model would you use to start exactly where you need to start. At the end, we have a 5 to 10 minute session, a very interesting one. We added this last moment from Salzgitter, one of our customers, and they are using this in a very innovative way to accelerate and support the talent management game. And we'll share more about that later. So very quick intro. I'm working with VR, XR experts around the world, managing our Virtalis leadership network, also called VLN. And this community is to share, learn, and connect with experts around the world. So we have two of those members present here today from BAE, and also Salzgitter is one of our VLN members. More info about that, visit our website, visit LinkedIn, and check it out, because VLN is accessible for all the Virtalis customers, and it's a great community, as I said, to learn, share, and connect. Yeah, I mean, I think you saw the showreel, which we started, and so if you ask me, you know, what are we doing? What is Virtalis doing? I mean, we're basically optimizing the whole product value chain. I mean, from concept to decommissioning, and using virtual reality in its broader sense, or extended reality, to provide solutions to help those individual processes accelerate or go faster, safer, etc. The interesting thing is, and this is, I mean, those are high data environments, heavy CAD environments, industrial enterprises. The interesting thing is that we quite recently also saw significant demands, you know, from other departments. Some of the examples here as well, and we'll also look at them today. Also why HR, but also learning and development departments are eagerly looking at possibilities. So that's an angle which we will also explore today. So we go beyond the standard applications, how to do it, where it fits. I also have a slightly broader look as well. So what's happening in the market? And this is an interesting thing about the also the need in the enterprise context. I mean, many of us are aware of impact of disruption and the pressure on enterprises. Yeah, 4 out of 10 CAOs, this is a Gartner research, told us that they are facing serious cost pressure because of disruption from other companies. So, I mean, it's not really new. We know that. It has to force enterprise to work faster and better, more efficient. But the interesting new thing is that in the last 24 months, I mean, additional challenges popped up that enterprises need to deal with. And one of them being new hybrid way of working, also I think quite familiar for many of us. But the other one is probably even a bigger one to crack, and that is the new dynamic talent landscape. And that's also what we'll be talking about today in many of the sessions. So basically means that enterprise have to optimize not only their supply chain, but also their human supply chain. So have a look to understand today's struggle in the talent management domain. So let's look at the modern professional. And some of you will recognize, I mean, because it's talking about us, you know, I mean, what we need in our job, what we need in our work. And the statistics, I mean, that's a very interesting thing, because if you look at it, that 55% of them say that mental stress is directly impacted in the confidence in the skills. Some of them saying, I don't have actually enough access to technology and training to do my job. Then you know that there's a huge training need to address, not only to prevent burnout, but also to help them grow, to help them feel confident, and perhaps to help them feel appreciated, you know, as part of the organizational goals. But what actually happened, you know, what happened? Maybe we saw it happening, but what are the drivers that actually brought us here? Because if we understand those drivers, we can also develop the right way forward. I mean, one thing for sure in the last 24 months is that they've changed everything for businesses, for leaders, for employees. And employees are starting to ask very basic questions like, why am I doing this? What is it for? How can we do it better? And the competition to attract new talent is growing fiercer than ever, fiercer every day. It's extremely difficult, look at these statistics, to attract the right talent. I mean, of every unemployed person, there are 2 job openings, and that is more or less universal. That's true around the world. So organization is also, I mean, as good as the people it employs. And how can you do it? You can build, buy, or borrow talent. And the most logical choice at this moment, it doesn't need a lot of rocket science, in the current market is to build talent, train your existing workforce, you know, and make them happy, make them strong, make them aligned with your corporate goals. And that's the most viable option. So, of course, there are plenty of ways of doing that. You know, I mean, you have traditional learning, but immersive learning is taking off, and we'll show that to you today. What is it? In short, I mean, it's learning by doing. It's from passive to more engagement from that perspective. It's from what you learn in a second or in a minute can otherwise take you hours. And I think the pure magic, and we will show that today as well, is the immersion. You know, I mean, thanks to the immersion, I'm being surrounded by a real scenario, situation. You can be on the job before you ever are on the job. So think the magic happens there, and we will uncover and reveal that today as well. But the numbers also support immersive learning. I think many of you probably have seen a statistic like this. This is from our friends from PwC. I mean, but you see more and more research pointing into the effectiveness of virtual reality. And also today, I mean, we have John Cardea. He will also share, his findings on the floor, in the company. And I think others will also share their own perspective on how effective this can be. Closing slide. Looking at the time, very happy to see that we are exactly on time. So, I mean, so if you break it down, I mean, enterprises are impacted by disruption modes. They are in disruption modes. They're optimizing supply chains and they need to act. At the same time, there is a huge time bomb ticking in the HR supply chain, and training is essential. And that's where immersive learning comes in, Also remain competitive and solve the lack of the talent inflow. So this is a starting point to see, what is basically happening on the enterprise level. And I'm very happy and excited, Jonathan, to introduce you. There you are, my friend.
Hello. Hi.
Loud and clear. And before we start, Jonathan, so tell us more about the Immersive Learning Research Network that you manage and build up from the ground. I think that's very interesting from our audience as well. And yeah, we're very keen to hear, some of these scientific elements and underlying factors for immersive learning and what you can share with our audience today. So go ahead.
Thank you, Dimitri, very much, and appreciate the warm welcome. My name is Jonathon Richter. I'm the Chief Executive Officer and President of the Board of the Immersive Learning Research Network, or ILEARN, ILRN. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization that's globally situated to basically find, showcase, and innovate on what works in immersive learning. We arose out of the American Education Research Association back in 2007 with a special interest group dedicated to immersive learning in virtual environments. And we felt it was a successful special interest group, but we were education researchers only, and we wanted to speak with the psychologists and the various areas of application and the video game designers who were involved in this. So we stepped outside of AERA to form this international interdisciplinary group. And so in 2014, we started. So Dimitri, do you have the presentation there going? Yeah, thanks.
Let's give a sign, I'll move it forwards and backwards for you, John.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. So we're open design and open science. We're trying to share what works in immersive learning to the public. There are, of course, as you know, big corporations, Microsoft and Apple and Google and others who are creating the large ecosystems and platforms. We're trying to be kind of level the playing field and help the consumer and the areas of application to understand what is the best way to implement these kinds of tools for their learners, whoever they might be. So we provide tools and support in the creation and the vetting of these high quality immersive learning experiences. For the first 5 years, we focused almost strictly on high quality research. So it was kind of trying to merge the two disciplines of computer science and education technology. And while one would think that those two fairly related disciplines would talk to each other and work together, just like lots of other disciplines where the language is specific and you're really trying to understand what's going on within a particular realm. It ended up that they didn't. So we worked really hard to build the bridge between those, and we've done pretty well. So we've gone beyond that to engage game designers as far as the UX and showcasing what works in immersive learning. So what we have now, some years later, is what we call this immersive learning research ecosystem. So on the knowledge tree needed to be sort of developed, putting a moat around the research community so that they could feel safe to be able to talk about the science of immersive learning. And science is different than other industries in the sense that they require a very specific method or set of methods for ascertaining the truth. So when you're talking about from a scientific perspective, you need a method, or at least within the confines of one discussion, you're going to say we're going to agree on this is the method for determining the truth, and then you gather some sort of data, and then you make inferences or conclusions after analyzing that data according to the method. And scientists need that assurance that the conversation and the dialogue is going to be constrained around those kinds of discussions. So we created this knowledge tree and created certain boundaries around that original discussion. But we felt the need also, because this industry, this area of XR and immersive learning is changing so quickly, and there's so many new innovations coming out, there's no research done on them. So we decided to add the futurists, those who are looking at the emerging edge of the future, the new technologies, the things that are allowing new ways of immersing, whether it's haptic technologies or augmented reality or mixed reality. All of these new kinds of technologies, there's no research done on it. And the thing is research takes time. It takes time to get some funding, get your team together, go out and find, gather the data, analyze the data, write it up, and get it published into a journal. That lead time is about 2 years. That's about the quickest that you can possibly do that. And so iLearn kind of exists between this emerging learning futures focus, which we've got a team of. The first immersive learning research report that we did had 100 different experts from around the world working together in a Delphi survey, and you can get our state of XR and immersive learning report on our website, and we're continuously doing that. So we're now doing our second round. The innovation are the people who are designing and working and teaching and learning with this technology on a day-to-day basis. They want to work it. How do I take XR and make it work with my students, or with a game jam, or create something new? And they take a combination of the research or the evidence base of what works with immersive learning and the newest cutting edge, looking at the possibility space provided by the futures aspect. The fourth is this transfer of trying to work on making things land where they could. So yeah, next slide, please. So the idea is, what is the scientific basis of immersive learning? And the idea of immersive learning actually goes back a long, long ways, to the cave paintings on the wall of Lascaux in France. But virtual reality has been around a long time. But from the current scientific perspective, the idea of immersion kind of goes back to the phenomenological idea of what is immersion. So
Mhm.
immersion is something that happens to a person and they experience it. So it's a phenomenon. If you are immersed, it can happen from a number of different ways. And designers, developers, and indeed, even practitioners of immersive learning oftentimes tend to focus on one or maybe two rather than multiple. So the first one is stimulus based, right? So you can surround yourself with virtual, digital bits where you perceive that you are in a particular environment. And that is what a lot of the technology focuses on is you're in virtual reality. It feels like you're in a place. And we tend to focus on your sense of touch, your sound, your ears, maybe even your taste, etc. And so that's stimulus-based immersion. But immersion also comes from psychological. You could get immersed in a book, or you can be immersed in a conversation. And so immersion is definitely something that happens in the brain, and it has something to do with time on task, and it has something to do with engagement with whatever it is that you are confronting. And so psychological engagement, making things fun, making things make sense, drawing people in from their various motivations is really is an important aspect of immersion. Narrative immersion, being part of a story, right? So what's going to happen next, right? So Hollywood is excellent at providing narrative immersion, and narrative immersion can be implemented into these immersive learning experiences in incredible ways. And then finally, just a big one to point out is social immersion. Social immersion happens when you're in a crowd, in a group, and you're feeling that that connectedness to that group, and it can happen in a variety of ways as well. So immersion, it happens from a variety of different ways. One key for immersive designers is to not just focus on one, but to try to authentically integrate a variety of different immersive perspectives, because different people have different preferences and are motivationally created differently.
And
Um,
John, is there also a hierarchy, I mean, of, or let's say, I mean,
yeah,
levels of immersion, or I mean, and I mean,
certainly.
what you use as a reference as well? I mean,
Yeah,
stimulus.
I
Yeah,
mean, the Immersive Learning Research Network, we focus solely on digital.
yeah.
So there are we could talk about immersing yourself in books, but I do think that there's most likely a hierarchy of immersion,
Mm,
um, given some of these factors,
yeah.
but but yeah, I think it really depends on the person, and it depends on the task. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so
Interesting. Yeah.
possibly not quite as straightforward as saying this is the first
Yeah.
thing that you have to have, because like I said, doing some summer reading this is always a great thing, and time and space disappear.
Yeah.
Csikszentmihalyi, who is a researcher out of Chicago, he talks about flow,
Yeah.
when a person's perception of time
Yeah.
and self disappears and they become one with the object of study. That's a real form of immersion that I think is
Yeah.
well sought after.
When he wrote the book and the research, I mean, you already can have that kind of flow of immersion when you read something or you work. I mean, that can happen, you know. Yeah. So by the way, John, one moment. So we're getting questions on the chat panel. So I would encourage everyone
Sure.
to share the questions, because I forgot to mention that at the start. I mean, at the end of every 50-minute presentation, there is room for one or two questions, and we'll select some of the best ones for our speakers. So go ahead.
Yes, yes. So for immersive learning from the Immersive Learning Research Network, we came up with 3 fundamental components of immersive learning. We called that our trivium, harkening back to the medieval scholar perspective. One is the input, that's computer science. So you have the hardware and the software. How is the hardware and the software providing the stimulus to help augment or create that immersive experience? The second aspect of immersive learning is the game studies or the interface design. You're learning something, and oftentimes learning things are complex or really challenging, and sometimes not that exciting. So how do game studies have evolved over the years to engage people to spend, upwards of around 300 hours on one game? And so how do they use those motivational hooks to keep people focused, to level up towards their particular goal, and those achievement-focused activities in game studies leading to UX or interface design are incredibly essential to what we're trying to do for immersive learning. And then, of course, you can put the hardware and software together and have really engaging, interface, but how do you know that people are learning? And that's where the learning sciences comes in. That's the pedagogy for how people are learning. It's the assessment features for how do we know that they're learning. It's the psychology of a particular discipline or a particular application. And so all 3 of these need to be lined up really well in order for you to have a high quality immersive learning experience. Next slide. So the idea of immersive learning and the question of how long will it take to go mainstream, it's a challenging one. I put 0 to 5 years.
Right.
I would say 0 because it's already here. William Gibson, the famous science fiction author, said, the future is already here. It's just not widely distributed yet. So I would say 5 years or even more, because we have a real jumble of technologies that we're trying to create interoperability. We're trying to be able to move from one to the other. Lots of these learning situations need some incredible instructional design around them. And like I pointed out on the previous slide, getting computer science expertise connected to and talking with game design expertise and connected to and working with those learning science expertise in an applied area it is a real challenge. So it requires connected, groups of experts to work together to do it well. So underneath here on the bullets these are all of the different Immersive Learning Research Networks houses of application. So you can see the workforce development and industry training is a house of application. Language, culture, and heritage, medical and healthcare education. Some of these are already pretty well off and going, like medical and healthcare education. There's so many different applications already for immersive learning, whereas some of the others are not quite there yet. But
What are
we
the
see,
most
go ahead.
recent ones who join? What kind of, let's say, industry or domains? I mean, are just exploring, or let's say in their initial exploration phase, or
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you definitely nature and environmental sciences, I think, has a number of, I think there's just a disconnect for people to use technology to study nature. Although there's definitely there. Lehigh University does some amazing things on watersheds. I mean, these are all houses that
Yeah.
have enough research and immersive learning experience applications so that the houses run. So
Mhm.
they're fortified. Key trends that we see through our State of XR and Immersive Learning report, which our executive summary is due out within the month for our second round. These are not from there, but these are just top of my head.
Mhm.
That the immersive learning supply chain is going to be more developed. We've had this promise of VR and XR for a long time, and people have been working behind the scenes. Facebook, now Meta, took advantage of that developed learning supply chain. It was already there, but to see that become more developed with, designers, instructional developers, and companies to sell it. I think that that supply chain is going to become more and more visible, and you're going to even see some ecosystems. Hopefully, iLearn, the Immersive Learning Research Network, will be one of those. So
Mhm.
you're also getting an increasing number and kinds of use cases
Yeah.
for our eighth annual iLearn conference, which we just held in Vienna. We had 132 peer-reviewed research articles or research cases. So we're growing every single year,
Mhm.
and you're just seeing a lot more of that all the time.
Mhm. Right.
You're also
And
seeing
John, can you give an example? I mean, sorry to interrupt, but we also have to move towards slowly towards our next present. But there's one
right.
question also about research examples. I mean, can you share
Hmm.
some kinds of examples in the workforce training and development domain?
Yeah, well, that third point there, that the
Yeah,
introductory, sort of like welcome to the company, and
yeah,
here's the production line, or here's the basics of what you
yeah,
are doing in your job, or this new position that you're taking. You can really cut through that top level of cognitive understanding and situate people within the workforce culture in a lot of ways. And you're seeing a lot of examples from a variety of workforce experiences that like that, um, in addition to the computer science.
right.
Um, so
So what's next?
what's next? I think augmented reality is going to, virtual reality right now has center stage, but I think augmented reality is going to be a major player, probably larger than virtual reality. You're going to see Meta or Facebook, waves and waves of that. We know that they've got a number of headsets that they're introducing, but the billions of dollars that they're investing in this space, I think, is going to have some big impact. You'll see a rise of 3D instructional design that will help the workplace as well as all the other industries, and you're already starting to see that come on. The blurring and dissolving of learning versus practice. So training for something and then going to practice as separate activities, I think, is going to become
Yeah,
less and
yeah,
less, so people will do
yeah,
it on the job.
yeah.
And then this disruptive innovation is just going to keep happening.
Mhm.
So the future becomes a little harder to predict. We're going to have shorter and shorter times for forecasting. And then finally, just the pitch for those connected learning ecosystems like iLearn and like IEEE with their standardizations. I think these types of groups are going to increasingly come together to serve the public. So,
Jonathan, appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot for your contribution. So I will recommend everyone to look at the Ireland website, check it out if it's of interest, and we'll be in touch and talking to each other soon. John, have a great
thank you,
day.
thank you,
Thanks a
Dimitri.
lot,
Yep.
and thanks for your inputs. Excellent. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye all.
Saying goodbye to John, I say welcome to Kaushal. And Kaushal is one of my colleagues. How are you doing, man?
Doing good.
Excellent. Some delay on the line, I don't think so, but maybe it's also my system. Yeah, Kaushal, I asked you to share some of the examples, case studies, I mean, from a couple of different type of organizations and actually looking at, how does it look like? What is it? And how does it present itself on the shop floor or in different situations? And I think you will be given access by Kitan, and we'll be juggling a little bit around left and right. Also, apologies for the weird start, but Kaushal is in control, and please.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you, Dimitri, for the introduction, and I hope everyone's enjoying this webinar and getting some good insight into the future of immersive learning. So as Dimitri said, he's asked me to prepare a few demos and rather show you the demos that we have built over time for our customers. And I've developed few sessions here, and I want to show you, what each of these demos will have to, how they benefit our customers, right? So let me introduce you to what you'll be seeing today. In the first demo, you'll see the user is taking advantage of kinesthetic learning. Okay, this is where you're learning via doing physical activity rather than just observing. This is proven to increase knowledge assimilation and retention. Okay, in this demo, you'll see the users grabbing tools and walking around the machine as they would in real life. The second demo you'll see is of a virtual environment in which the user must perform a series of steps to put out a fire. So this demo provides a lifelike environment in which they can train in without putting themselves in danger. The third demo is of an area in which the user is training collaboratively to assemble automotive parts, enabling them to be trained from a convenient location without having to travel elsewhere. So what you will see from these training scenarios that immersive visualization can enable effective training of different users, operators. You'll have emergency response teams, and they go through these training through full immersion, realistic environments, active learning as well. So as more and more companies are embracing the buzzwords, the digital transformation, right? They're leveraging immersive learning as a tool to train their employees. And our research shows that immersive learning programs are 30 to 70% more effective than training, classrooms or e-learning. So it's an absolute game changer for teaching someone something that is complex, something that's mission critical. So without taking up any more time, let me jump into these demos here. This virtual training scene is created for a food and beverage company specializing in meat rendering equipment. The CAD model was provided by the customer and imported into Visionary Render using one of 30+ importers. The textures and colors were added along with the animation sequences to create this training scenario. The purpose of this training is to help train technicians and engineers on how to overhaul the presser unit as seen here. It will allow for faster and safer training and will save resources. This training scenario takes a stepped approach to how the user must perform procedures in real life. The guided instructions are placed in the scenario to allow for new employees to rehearse the procedures before they service the real machine. Going through the procedures virtually, engineers can identify any problems in servicing and optimize their maintenance process. The stage sequence prevent removal of Part B before Part A and require correct tooling to perform a task. Being fully immersed in a head-mounted display, the user must perform physical movement as they would on the plant floor. This virtual training allows for users to run through the procedures 10 times in the time taken to do it once physically. and improve training retention. Doing virtual training allows users to train from remote locations and practice using virtual components, reducing the risk of costly maintenance errors and added downtime. So by adopting virtual reality training, this customer is already seeing ROI up to 78% improved retention, 40% reduction in training cost, and 30% reduction in training time. This scene was created for a leading oil and gas offshore company specializing in oil exploration and drilling. The purpose of this virtual scenario is to train oil rig workers to respond to fire emergencies and decrease unplanned production downtime, for which the customer was losing an average of $500,000 a day. The customer wanted to increase safety, decrease production downtime, and continuously train current and new employees to be better prepared. So in this scenario, the user can navigate to all the important parts of the drilling rig to familiarize themselves using viewpoints on the left. The user is seeing glimpses of what they would typically see on the oil rig. The training scene starts by having a small fire start near a key equipment, and due to a leak causing an explosion, and as a result a larger fire. This starts the alarms and flashing lights all over the rig. The next step is for the oil rig worker to go to the computers in the control room and identify where the damage is and reroute the flow of hydrocarbons to stop the leak. For this, they must press a few buttons and pull a lever to reroute the flow of hydrocarbons. Once the flow is rerouted, the oil rig worker must put out the fire by grabbing the fire hose reel and walking a safe distance away from the fire. They must spray the fire with foam, and after some time, the fire will dissipate. Once the fire is put out, the worker then goes back to the control room to reroute the flow to the correct process. This will happen once the emergency button is reset and the lever is pushed back. By having their employees go through this process virtually, they can experience real-life scenarios without being put in hazardous situations. The customer was able to reduce the number of fire-related incidences down to almost zero. They also increased their productivity and profitability as the workers knew how to handle similar situations in a timely manner. This resulted in decreased production downtime and savings of millions of dollars per year. With virtual training, they were able to minimize operational risk and eliminate reputation-damaging safety incidents. This training scenario is created for one of the largest manufacturers of chrome-plated plastic parts for the automotive industry. This customer's training methodologies were inefficient, time-consuming, error-prone, and required utilization of a physical work environment for the new training staff. By utilizing a physical work cell for the new trainees, they were reducing their production yield so the trainees could have a first-hand experience with tools and machines on the work floor. Not only it affected their production output, but it also required 4 weeks' time from an experienced trainer. The cost of trainer, the reduced production output, and inability to train more than one trainee at a time had a significant cost when viewed from an enterprise level. The customer adopted VR Training Lab, as seen here, to train their employees. Utilization of existing CAD models made creation of the training simulation much easier. The VR training scenario incorporates training instructor, trainee, procedures for each step of the manufacturing process. This allowed the trainee to demonstrate proficiency with familiarity, reducing risk and rework. The collaborative feature improved communication, reducing stress and improving employee satisfaction. As a result, the customer was able to implement a successful VR lab, ensuring that they were able to retain talent through innovation. It transformed how their team was able to work collaboratively, locally and globally, inside of a virtual environment. By adopting Virtalis VR technology, the customer was able to drive efficiency across their training operations and reduce training time by 50% and improve knowledge retention by 10%. So for the next set of demo, I would like to introduce my colleague, Paul McCall, who has prepared a narrative on the project we did for the National Grid in the UK. The National Grid trains their service and maintenance engineers using our immersive visualization technology, including simulation of typically hazardous environment in which they do their work. So let's see what Paul has to say.
Hello, my name is Paul McCall. I'm Systems Architect and one of the Solution Engineers here at Virtalis. What I'd like to show you today is a past project that we delivered for the National Grid in the UK. For those of you that don't know the National Grid, they own and manage the UK's national transmission networks for both gas and electricity. So here at their training centre in the centre of the UK, they've built what we call an above ground installation, or AGI. The AGI is a substation, it's a distribution substation for gas, and it uses real hardware and is exactly representative of what they would find in the field. They built it at the rear of their site in a clear zone. And although not filled with potentially explosive gas, this is highly pressurized with air to simulate the correct experience that an engineer would have on a pressurized gas system. Releasing compressed air wrongly can have explosive effects and can cause serious injury. So to prepare students prior to exposure to this potentially hazardous training scenario, they're walked through and can practice maintenance on a digital twin of the physical system. This digital twin we can see here. So on a digital twin, we've got a number of different areas that we can look at. There's the filter skid, the regulator cabin, the meter skid, or the pigging loop. So if we fly down, for example, to the meter skid, we can see here that we've actually made it transparent so you can see through it. That's switchable, so we can start with a plain system. The students can then turn that transparent, and by turning it transparent, we can actually begin to see how gas will flow through the network. So here we have gas flowing past an impeller. Here we have the gas going through a reducer ring. We can also see how impurities in the gas are measured using both ultrasonics and lasers. But one of the great examples of how this training scenario might work would be over here in the pigging loop. So let's just set the pigging training scenario up. Here we can see a pig. The pig is the red item that you're seeing in the middle of the screen here. This is what an engineer would put into a pressurized gas system in order to do maintenance and cleaning of the inside of the pipework. Normally they'd be expected to do all of this work out in the field without any cues, perhaps just their instruction manuals. However, here, for the first time students, we can throw instructions up on the screen and guidances. Now let's remember that this is often done in front of a large scale screen, so something that's 8 or 10 feet across. The student can stand in front of this screen and use his hands to actually manipulate the virtual reality scenario while a trainer is watching on and while the rest of the students are learning from his actions. So let's run through a couple of these steps. Here we can see it's asking me in the bottom right hand corner to open balance valve 1. So we can walk down the system, easily spot balance valve 1. So that's here. And this valve handle that you can see needs to be opened. So we would select that and open it. We're then been asked to add the vent valve and open the pig trap valve. I happen to know that those are at this end of the system. So we need to get the vent valve out of the toolbox, add that, and then open the pig trap valve. We'll move to the vent valve down here, open that, and the balance valve. Now, although you may not be able to hear it on the audio that we're doing here today, there are audible cues going on in the background. You can hear gas being let out. You can hear gas flowing, so you get audible cues of how the system's operating. We then need to purge the nitrogen. Let's click the button and open the pig trap door, because that's now been depressurized, and load the pig. And these are some of the steps that a student might normally go through. I hope really that gives you an idea of what they might be doing and how they might be doing it. Once they've done it this way, they'd have to run through it with the cues switched off, of course. But that gives them an idea of how to load and train safely before they go into this real-life hazardous area and try it on the physical equipment. That really concludes this little training example, and I'll hand back to the team. Thank you.
Kaushal, thanks for getting these examples. I think they speak for themselves and extremely powerful. So if you can show your camera, then please join me. Looking at the time, there you are, man. Thanks for putting them together. I think they're very relevant. There are a few questions. I mean, one of them, let's go very quickly. I mean, how much time would it take? I mean that's a very difficult one. But tell us a little bit about the process, you know, for developing a training scenarios like the ones we saw. I mean, and keep it short, please. But
Sure.
please.
Yeah. So generally we'll work with the customer in developing their training steps on how they usually would perform a task, and then we'll request them to give us their CAD models for the users, right? What they'll be training on. And then from that point onwards, our customer success team will take that information and we'll build the training scenarios, right? We'll bring in the CAD models using one of our 30 plus importers mentioned in our in the demo earlier. And then from that point onwards, we'll add textures, colors and materials and things like that. Some of the behaviors that you saw, we will add that using some basic scripting. That's very easy to do. And our customer success team will then hand it back to our customers, and we'll train them on how to use the scene as well. And then we'll remain on the back end just to provide support. So in a nutshell,
they can do it themselves as well, I mean.
Correct. Yeah. We can either develop the scenes for you and train you how to use it, or we can train your team and then we'll support you as needed.
Excellent. Okay, I suggest to the audience, keep the questions coming for all of the presenters. We'll collect them, get them back to you. Kaushal, let's go to the break, and let's ask Ketan to. We have 2 questions prepared, which we would like to run just before the 5-minute break. Let's bring this all up. Kaushal, thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Stick around if you want, but it's not necessary. Be quiet. So here is a quick poll. We have two questions. So primary goal to making changes to your approach to training. We'd just like to get a high level understanding um, about your current situation. So let's wait another 5 seconds, Gitan. I mean, I'll leave it up to you. I mean, we have many of them have voted, so some of them are still voting. So what do we see? And this is also interesting for our speakers after the break. So all of the above: save time, 0, reduce cost waste, little bit, employee engagement, I would say only 15%, and improving the effective training. So choosing for a way of more effective training and all of the above. So good one. So let's run the next one, please. This is how you believe your organization or yourself or your team actually views training. Is it strategic? Is it disconnected? I mean, is it basically owned by individual departments? Is it an ad hoc initiative? You know, you just do it when needed? Or are there no training programs in place? You would be surprised. Yeah, interesting. Yes, so you see an organizational approach, not a company-wide driven initiative. That could also be true because of the size of the companies that are typically attending our webinars. They are typically also larger, so that could be one of the explanations. Important strategic initiative and 9% ad hoc, 9% and no programs in place. So relevant input. It's 1 past the hour, so I suggest we take a 5-minute break. I will close my webcam, close the sound. We'll get back with John after 5 minutes, and John will be presenting the BAE case study and how VR training is accelerating the production and engineering processes. So, Kitan, if you can give me the screen back to my other laptop, then I'll see everyone back in 5 minutes from now. Excellent. Thanks a lot. John, let's slowly start up the presentation and get yourself in front of the team over here.
Sounds good.
Yes. Yes, can see it and loud and clear. So I can also hear you loud and clear. I know that we tested your webcam, but
Yeah, unfortunately the webcam won't connect. I actually can't see any of you all either. So probably something with the firewall. But yeah, just let me know. You want me to just go ahead and get started?
I suggest we get started. I'll close my webcam as well. It will only be distracting for your presentation. But quick intro. John, you're also one of our VLN members. Very appreciated by the fact that you're always sharing what you can share on behalf of BAE, which is already a big thing. So browse through some of your slides and demos. So I'm very excited to share this with the rest of the world. So go ahead, and I'll talk to you in. I'll put my camera back on when you're done. Thank
All
you.
right, sounds good.
Go
Thanks.
ahead.
So hello everybody, I'm John Cardea. I am a systems engineer for BAE Systems over in the US. I'm also the tech lead for our virtual reality development group. Got a couple slides here to talk through one of the use cases that we have that kind of relates to training. It relates to training, some proofing out. So it touches on some of the things that we've heard of already today, but with a little bit of a twist. So I'll go ahead and get into that. So real quickly, some of the hardware that we're able to use to help out with all of this training is a combination of laptops, desktops, HTC Vive headsets. We have a couple different active walls in a few of our locations. So Visionary Render has really enabled us to create these scenes and interact with them in a bunch of different ways so that when a user wants to either train or just view a scene, whatever they're trying to do, we can have the most ideal way for them to do that. A little bit of background for what our technical approach here is for training. This started out as a procedural proofing effort. We work with a lot of different customers. We are also a systems integrator, so we don't actually develop any hardware. But one of our jobs is to take all this information that other people create, and we have to write up procedures and different tests for certain components. And one of the problems with such a large customer base is that you run into problems with siloed artifacts. So one of the things that we're trying to do with these trainings is to take this siloed information, whether it is CAD models, paper documents, different contractor-owned artifacts, and transition that into more digital engineering and having eventually digitally integrated artifacts. So, we're aggregating paper documents into Cameo Systems Modeler, we're processing and integrating our 3D models into Visionary Render, and then we're combining all of that together. So and then once that's done, we have a better single source of truth as opposed to having data and information all over the place. So, one of the differences from what we've seen with some of these other examples is that these procedures that we have can be upwards of 100 pages long. They're very complicated. Some of the systems are hard to actually interact with on a daily basis. So, one of the ways that we were approaching this is we take this large document or a procedure that needs to be written out, we can develop that in Cameo where you can get a much better idea of the actual order and how this system is going to be set up. You can run simulations with that. And then we're able to export this data into Visionary Render so that we have our single source of truth of all of the information for a procedure. And then we can bring that into our VR scene. We can use that information from Cameo or from a paper document, really however it needs to be set up. We can expand on that with those virtual interactions that we've seen. We can list things in different GUIs, and then we can we have that detailed CAD that we've seen in a couple other demos. So that's a little bit of the background of what we're trying to do. So this demo that I'm about to show is a very much bare bones version that we are allowed to share outside of our community. but this is just going to give us a quick example of how we can combine together this information, from documents. We can bring it in with different CAD models to really help either proof out a procedure to make sure that it's going to work the way we want it to before it gets to the very end fully submitted, and then we're also able to make sure everything works, and then people can actually train on that so that they're more familiar with what they're going to be seeing before they have to go to a physical location and do these. So our team of engineers came up with this a couple weeks ago. A few of these I'm not going to really talk to with these importing and deleting steps, but these come directly to into here through some scripting languages, some scripts. We have those saved on a network drive, but essentially we now have these steps open here, so a user can run through these, see the list of what they need to do. So I won't run through this entire thing, but some of these steps, first one is you have to press a button to open a hatch. So now a user can press that whether you're on your computer, in a scene, on an active wall, in a headset. We ran this demo a little bit earlier today where we had a couple computers networked together. Each user can see each other. It can be really helpful if you have, because most procedures require more than one person. So we press that button, it marks that step is now being completed. It brings us into the room that we need to be working on. Like I mentioned, this is pretty bare bones, but very similar to what we had talked about before. Depending on what 3D models that you have, you can texture them. Sometimes they come already textured, depending on what CAD models we get. And then you can run through these steps. So for instance, we have to get through this door, have to enter in a password, but we're also able to help the user out. So say you do enter an incorrect password, you get that error that something has gone wrong, it turns red, and then we can ensure that the user, only when they enter the correct information, they get that green arrow and those doors are going to open up. So users are able to come in here. We can create any sorts of GUIs that we might need. We can see that there are a couple warnings going on here. One of the ways that having these kinds of procedures in VR can be really helpful is that, say in this procedure, you see that we have these warnings, and then the procedure says that the user has to turn valves to fix these burst pipes. Well, that's just one step right there, but once you've combined these together, maybe before you've published your whole procedure, you might realize, okay, in this scenario, that room that we have to go to is way far on the other side. So maybe it's important to state in here that, another person needs to be in the other room. Another person needs to be in the other room, or we have to physically put in here that a user has to walk all the way down this hallway, open this door right here before they can get into the room where they see some burst pipes. So, we can come in here. We can see that, next step is to turn these. We have a couple indicators here as well saying that there's an error going on. We can click through. We can see that, once they've been selected and closed off, the lights change colors. So we can do that to all three of these. We can see that now that we know that all of the pipes have been closed off, the system automatically detects that. There's, and then there's a bunch of different uses that you can have for this. For instance, we can have a couple different electrical switches that we can turn. Not going to go through all of that, but it can be really helpful in really understanding what the use is going to be for a particular training or a procedure. You can run through that. You can have multiple people collaborated into a session where you have a couple, you would have one person in this room, one in the other. And these can get really complex. Again, like I mentioned, this is a relatively straightforward example of this, but we have other models and demos for our customers that can really get deep in the weeds on what screens are showing, different systems interacting with each other, and things like that. So we can rerun this diagnostic, and then we see that what we had done with the valves were closed, that's now complete, and now the problem is just with these breakers. So a lot of options that we can do with this, we can turn keys, we can press different buttons, however the user requires it. So, we're doing this for our customer. We've shown off tons of demos of this, and even in a simple case like this, people are really understanding the usefulness and where this can go in the future, especially as, say you're working on an old program where lots of stuff is in paper documents. It can be very helpful to, save money, help people understand better what their job's going to be. New engineers coming out of college that are jumping into these programs that don't have years and years of experience like a lot of the workforce, can be extremely helpful for that. So that's the quick demo that I wanted to give. I'll pass it back to Dimitri if we have any questions or anybody has any follow-ups. But yeah, appreciate the opportunity here.
Yes, John, I mean, incredible, man, sharing this with us. I mean, there's one question on how are you deciding what scenarios or procedures, to embed in the training? Is there because you can go very deep, you can stay high level. I mean, how do you determine all the necessary scenarios that needs to be checked off?
Yeah, great question. So, that's just conversations that we have with our customers, whether they're internal to BAE or external. We're not trying to use VR just because it's cool or anything like that. We really want to use the right tool for the right job. And there's, with the scripting language that's built into Visionary Render, it can be a little bit harder sometimes to build out really, really complex. It's not a gaming engine. We know some other companies use that kind of thing, but for a procedure like this, where you have a set written down structure, that when I push this button, these things have to happen. Maybe you have to do steps A, B, C before D is even an option. Those are all super doable, and it's really just conversations with the customer. One of the other great things that we've enjoyed is how agile the development of this is. So we can put together a few steps, we can show it off to the customer. We are really taking the approach of, everybody's working on this together. It's not a please give me this final result, go off and do it, and then we get no more feedback. This really enables us to have a lot more collaboration with our customers to make sure that what we're delivering is going to be helpful.
And how many team members are involved in developing, the training scenarios you just showed us?
Yeah, so we have a very small team right now. We have there's only four of us, I believe, right now. So we're working on tons of different pilot projects, but even with a small team, it can be very useful, especially for our customer. There's a lot of information that is shared, so the end goal might be slightly different from person to person, but say we get a new request for a training or just to help with a design review or anything like that, what we need to do for them has most likely already been done to a degree. So we have, baseline files of CAD, we have different screens that we've built out that can be reused. So, even with a pretty small team, we're able to get a lot of this information done.
In any case, I think it makes it even more impressive, John. So final question from the list. That's the last one, folks. Question: are there any benefits beyond training? Is there more to report? This is training oriented, but
right, yeah. So we picked this particular use case that we were allowed to share, but a couple of the other ways that we're using Visionary Render in some of these scenes is, I mentioned there's obviously the training and the procedural proofing, but we've also done a decent number of design reviews for certain components, and then it's also for familiarization in general. When you're working on systems that are very massive and very hard to get access to, we've created a couple scenes that are using CAD, 2D photos, 360-degree photos, and we're looking to add in some LiDAR as well to really help people familiarize themselves with what they're going to be doing, where they might need to go, or just, even if it's not for a specific purpose, really just having a better idea of where they fit in the work that they do on the system.
John, thanks a lot. I mean, have a great day. Talk to you soon. Thanks for your presentation. We'll move to our next speaker of today.
Thanks.
And that speaker is Adnan. Who will be sharing his own deck. We can see your background over there. So, let me do a brief introduction while you're finding the deck we're going to talk about. Adnan is CEO, co-founder of ITD. Very interesting, ambitious organization headquartered in the UAE. I'm very happy that they are a very strategic partner of Virtalis, running projects primarily in the Middle East, but also far beyond that region. And you will be sharing ideas, how to do it, how to run it, how to build a business case, and share some of your best practices. And it's an impossible question, I guess. I mean, doing that in 15 minutes, but I'm still going to ask you, Adnan. So if you can locate your presentation. Yes, there you are. Are you still muted or not? I'm not completely sure. I don't think you are. Can you?
Oh yeah, do you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. And before you start, I mean, take us a little bit through the history of ITD, man. It's an interesting
Yeah, absolutely.
story.
I just want to make sure you see the right screen because actually I don't know what I'm sharing. So
I see a presentation with a quantum leap for your organization's transformation.
cool. All right. Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me, and thanks everyone for being on this call. Very happy to share my 2 cents on how we are trying to convince the industry and are convincing companies within the industry to utilize training methods such as virtual reality and augmented reality in order to improve their organization. And so ITD was launched as a initiative with the UAE government, specifically the Sharjah government. For the people that don't know, that's one of the Emirates in the United Arab Emirates. And with the single reason of wanting to invest in technology and in the future of education, as in the government wanted to do that. And myself and my partner, we came to speak to a gentleman who runs a government institution, which is a research and technology and innovation park, which is owned by a university. And it's quite fascinating what they're doing, but their primary objective is to bring university research into practice. And I'm sure you can all imagine on this call how VR could play a role in that, whether that's helping to further develop prototypes and ideas and put them into a virtual prototype and be able to showcase something, and a lot more. So, I mean, I really have only 15 minutes. I'm just going to jump into the presentation because Dimitri asked me to make a few slides. Now, what I'm going to try to do today is I'm going to share with you how I make a business case. And hopefully this would help you to create a bit of focus. And I was just looking at the poll questions because I really think the key thing when it comes to making a business case is focus. And out of the poll questions, I could see that 54% hit all of the above. And maybe at the end, we'll give you something that can help you focus on a single objective and work from there. And when I read the title of this session, why the future of learning is immersive, I remember that about a year ago, I gave a presentation which was called "The Future of Learning is Going Primitive." And do you see my next slide? I don't hear you, Dimitri.
Sorry, I was muted, but I don't see it. So.
Oh, that's not great. Show screen.
Yes, there you go, man. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now I was talking about technology on that session, and I'm just reflecting back to something that Dimitri said earlier during the session, which is learning by doing. And funny enough, when you think about VR, it's learning by doing. So we're giving people the opportunity to go back to how our brain is wired, and our brain is wired to learn by doing things. And just quickly, there was a Harvard Business Review report. You can Google it. Literally, if you search for this quote, organizations spend 359 billion globally on training in 2016. It's reaching 420 billion, by the way, roughly 25 million per company, looking at corporates. And the key question was it worth it? And the answer was no. And the reason that the answer was no, I see that I didn't copy everything, is that if you look, for instance, at our retention level, it's extremely limited. So what we want to do is we want to focus on effective training. So going back again to the poll question, I think most of us should want to improve the effectiveness of the training. If you really ask yourself, everything that we have discussed during this 1 hour and a bit, how much do you actually memorize? So VR really gives us the opportunity, and AR as well, to make things immersive, virtual, and that helps us to better memorize things. So moving on, happy to, by the way, cover this offline at a later stage. I've been asked to cover a few things. Where do you start and how do you build a business case? What to look for when selecting your first use case, and how to create top-level buy-in. Actually, it should be the other way around. Everything we do should start with creating top-level buy-in. And eventually, I will give you a customer example. So where you start, in my view, is really with where you are. So often, whatever we're looking to resolve. So let's say we're looking to reduce costs, increase employee engagement. I think increased employee engagement is a good example. You need to ask yourself, so how engaged are employees today? What am I doing today to engage my employees? And in order to be able to answer that when it comes to training, you obviously need to be asking yourself, okay, what are the tools I'm providing for engageful experience? And based on these tools, you should be asking yourself, I mean, let's assume you're not too happy. How is your current state somewhat negatively impacting the outcome that you're looking for? For instance, we know that it's a quite well-known fact that organizations generally do have training, but it doesn't often get utilized. So that's a waste of investment. And then what we really like to do is we would like to talk to people and say, okay, so let's forget about your current state. Let's forget about everything that you're unhappy about. If we would be able to create a desired state, what would that look like? And the cool thing that I also like to mention, specifically when it comes to XR, VR, AR, etc., is that it's limited to your imagination. We can absolutely recreate anything, any scenario. And with companies like Virtalis, it's becoming easier and easier to do that at a more collaborative way, at a higher speed, and things that actually help your business case. And then one of the things that a lot of people forget when they are talking and looking at building a business case is actually forget that they need to showcase that there are certain outcomes they need to be looking for, and they need to obviously be positively impacting your business. So we'll talk about that in a moment. And eventually, what is required? We call those PBOs. What is required in order to achieve these positive business outcomes? We're going to talk about that. And eventually, how do we measure success? So these are 6 questions. If you're going to build a business case, these are 6 very good questions to ask yourself. And I'll share a link in a moment to a certain question methodology you can be kind of asking yourself. So looking at where we stand, what we're unhappy about, what we would like to achieve in a desired state, how that would help our business, what is required to achieve that, and how do we measure success. And so I was talking about focus earlier, and if we put classroom e-learning and VR together, and again, also here, I'm happy to share the research behind this. If we would ask people to do the same exercise based on classroom e-learning and VR, in all scenarios, we're seeing that people are more engaged in VR, are memorizing things better in VR, and obviously that makes total sense because it's not a 2D, it's not textual, it's not a single perspective. As the word says, it's immersive. So the proof that it works is there. The question is, how do you make it work for you? And what are the things that you're going to focus on to ensure that there's a certain use case you can look for? And there's 4 criteria that generally I talk to organizations about, and our team talks to organizations about when it comes to looking for objectives and things we would want to bring the organization, because introducing new and cool technology is fun, but it needs to make sense. So in all scenarios, we know we're able to reduce cost, reduce risk. So the 2 R's and the 2 I's, right? Reduce cost, reduce risk, increase productivity or efficiency, effectiveness, and increase revenue. I got a nice deck from Dimitri, but I already heard that your colleague used this exact sentence, so I'm not going to repeat it. But as we have heard earlier during the session today, that research has indicated that immersive learning programs are 30 to 70% more effective, as per my last slide as well. So again, the research is there that is showing us that that's proving essentially the point. And eventually, when we want to create top-level buy-in, I'm giving you a few more questions you can ask yourself. So let's say you're a oil and gas company, since we have seen an oil and gas example earlier, and I believe I have also an oil and gas example in a moment. The question is, why should you be doing anything? I know that we have a use case where certain training had to be given on an oil rig, and people had to be transported with a helicopter. Okay, well, why should you do anything? 1, it's dangerous. 2, it's time consuming. 3, it's costly. You could come up with a whole list. And then why now, if we've been doing it like this for the past 100 years? Well, that really comes down to what is available today to replace what we didn't have yesterday and making the use case for it. And then the solution, I know, can be confusing because there's a lot of companies out there that say that they provide a solution. And obviously, we're all here on the Virtalis call, and being a partner of Virtalis, I have seen what the technology can do and the speed of execution that Virtalis and their team come with. So this is something that you really want to dig deeper in and really pick the right solution. And to me, it comes down to achieving these points that I've mentioned earlier. Which solution helps me increase revenue, increase productivity, reduce risk, and reduce cost? Clearly not an opportunity that's very costly and it's very difficult to work with. So what I like about Virtalis is that it's very easy to use. Anyone can use Virtalis technology. And eventually, if we're going to present this back to management, we always go back to our story. How are we going to do it? The how is generally the desired state, right? The how better is generally the positive business outcomes, because we want to highlight how the business is winning. And the proof points are preferably external research that proves that this is how we've been able to validate that this has happened elsewhere and that it's successful. And eventually, I'm just going to give you one example. Just before I do that, again, to highlight what I've been saying before, employees in VR courses can be trained up to 4 times faster, which is something that you can see from this graph. So what are our customers locally is the Emirates Global Aluminium. It's if it's not the biggest aluminium company in the world, it's somewhere up there in the top 3. Very large organization, and they decided during COVID to suspend all classroom training. I'll just give you one single example. I've also heard a really good example earlier about saving $500,000 a day. And in the case with them, I don't want to go into numbers because we don't have approval for that, but I can tell you they had to sometimes shut down machines to be able to train people. So we went in and we basically recreated the type of training they would give new employees, which by the way is hazardous. So there you go, reducing risk. Shutting down systems is costly, right? So being able to do it in VR has no impact on the business, meaning we're reducing cost. And then eventually we were able to put them in a position where they could be more productive, because now people don't need to go to a facility and get trained there in a dangerous environment where they could make mistakes. They could actually do it in VR. So we went and recreated a number of scenarios that the organization can be trained in. And as complicated as aluminium melting, I mean, if that is possible, if you can train people in aluminium melting, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of other things you can imagine you could be doing. So bottom line, what did we do for them? We helped them prevent hazards, reduce accidents, and mitigate risk. And obviously, this is quite confidential what their financials are here, but I'm sure you could come up with the fact that out of the 7,000 employees they have, 4,000 people have to be trained, what that would mean. And so I don't know how I'm doing time-wise. Dimitri?
You're doing fine, man. And yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
great.
I don't think you can see me, yeah. So, but I'm.
Okay, great.
But
So
as long as I'm
I
not,
had another.
great example. Yeah. We have some questions as well, but I mean,
Sure,
how
go
many
ahead.
slides
I
do
had
you
some
have?
other examples.
Hmm?
Please.
No, sorry. Go ahead. I mean, how many slides are remaining?
Well, I didn't know how long I was going to spend on talking through this, but
Yeah.
I've limited it here. I've
Yeah.
more examples if people are interested in that, but
Yes.
happy to take some questions as well.
Yeah, let's do that. Also looking at the time, Adnan. So I think first of all, I think sharing such a comprehensive but also tangible business model is very useful and important. The very interesting question we received is, I think we can really address this, is that do you have any, let's say, clear examples, maybe Excel based, of this model, how it works in practice? And for that, yeah, that person, I mean, what I agreed also with Adnan is that we could do a deep dive session, because I mean, we only have 15 minutes today, you know, where we can come together, use the model, do additional explanation, because you are using this own business model, ROI model with all your customers.
Yeah.
And you can Adnan is willing to take us through the details and share the inputs and how it typically works for industrial enterprises around the world. So Adnan, if that
the answer
commitment
to the
still
question is, yeah, no, absolutely. So the answer to, so first of all, absolutely happy to do that. But more importantly, I've stripped this model down back to like 2%. There's a lot of comprehensive stuff behind this, but you know, with the limitations that we have in this call, I stripped it down. And my intention was to give people pointers that they could utilize today, tomorrow, thinking about their business and how to achieve positive business outcomes, as I said. But more than happy to share templates and all kinds of other stuff that could help you actually put this into practice.
Fantastic. So my suggestion as an answer, let's plan a deep dive and spend half an hour to 45 minutes, if possible, an appropriate time slot, and to go into the details of the metrics you just shared. Man.
So what I'll do, I don't know when we're going to have that session, and what I'll do, I'll share a few templates with you, and then you can share it with whoever's interested.
That will be fantastic, terrific, because everyone will receive access to the link, and presentation deck will include the templates as well. Everything you can share, we'll share it with our audience. Fantastic.
Cool.
Done. Thanks a lot.
Thank you as well.
Talking to you soon, man. Appreciate it on behalf of everyone. Thanks a lot.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
So, thanks. So that brings us to the final session. I think it's probably good to have the video stand by, Ketan, and I'll introduce that. So we had a last minute update from Salzgitter. We just looked at an aluminium company, but Salzgitter is one of the biggest, steel producers, and we took notice of a very interesting project that they are working on in the HR department. And one of our counterparts, contact person, Mr. John Yalcinkaya, he is in the recruitment domain. He's also a consultant, and he's using VR and basically also the technology that we provide to Salzgitter in a very interesting domain to recruit new talent and basically solve, this talent problem or address the problem to make sure they get the best possible engineers on board. So, Ketan, it's probably good if you run the video. I'll take over with the additional slide.
Hallo zusammen, ich bin Yalcinkaya und ich arbeite im Recruiting der Salzgitter Flachstahl GmbH und werde ein bisschen was zum Thema 360-Grad-Video erzählen. Junge Menschen erreicht man heutzutage hauptsächlich durch Social Media, weil da halten sie sich auf. Aber junge Menschen nutzen Social Media anders, als wir Unternehmen das denken. Junge Menschen möchten unterhalten werden, sie möchten entertained werden. Ausgehend von diesem Gedanken habe ich gemeinsam mit den Kollegen von Virtalis ein 360-Grad-Video produziert in Form einer Achterbahnfahrt, die wir bei uns aufs Fabrikgelände virtuell gebaut haben. Es geht also darum, Unterhaltung und Arbeitgeberattraktivität zu verknüpfen. Wie das Ganze gelaufen ist, hoffe ich Ihnen dann in einem separaten Meeting zu zeigen, wenn wir soweit sind, dass wir unser Video veröffentlichen dürfen. Ich danke Ihnen für Ihre Aufmerksamkeit und dass ich heute die Möglichkeit bekommen habe, zu Ihnen zu sprechen.
Excellent, I'm back again. So if you can give me presentation rights on the other laptop. So thanks to John and the Salzgitter team to share this very quick video. I think it's an interesting one. He's also talking about the 360 video, and he promised us in the next session as well. We're also waiting formal approval to release this on a global level, to explain what they've built, based on the virtual models, the 3D models of their plant, and how they're using it and planning to use it more to attract new engineers. Because this is a typical, real brick and mortar company, and presenting it in the most attractive way is good for customers, engineers, and particularly new talent. This was on the Hannover Messe. It was a huge event, and Salzgitter had a huge presence there. I also find our Virtalis cave on the left side in your screen as well, with the same purpose also. Bringing that technology and that company in a very innovative mindset. I'll leave it to that. I'm also looking at the time, so slowly getting towards the closure, because many of you are still around, which is very good. And I'd like to thank you on behalf of all the speakers. I hope you liked what we showed today. There are numerous organizations who are doing it, like you. You've seen the impact, you've seen the numbers, you've also noticed, where you can start and how you can start. So it's certainly not a novelty anymore. So reach out to us and help us. Let us help you taking the next steps. If you want to learn more also about some of the use cases, let us know. For now, everyone, have a great day. Reach out to us on LinkedIn. Share a message on virtalis.com. Every question will be answered, and we have a team ready to help you take the next steps on immersive learning. So for now, thanks a lot. Thanks to the speakers. thanks to joining, and have a great day, everyone. Thanks a lot.